I'm beginning to understand that there's no point in being angry. And when I say that, I really just mean in the sense that I think that there's never really a necessity for our anger, and there's never really a full necessity for our negative emotions to almost permeate in the way that we live our lives, in the way that we experience life as a whole. And, that's not to say that we should almost suppress our negative emotions and suppress our anger to the point that we almost like act like as if it's not there. But I think that's important to recognize when we do experience negative emotions. And from there, that's when we could finally recognize that it's not something that's really beneficial for us or productive or constructive for us in any way. Because I think that really the only two things that you could ever be angry about are either things external to you or things internal to you. And I think that in almost letting go of any anger that you experience, it's in recognizing that anything external to you is not in your control. It's in God's control, and anything internal to you, you are fully in control of, and you're capable of changing at any point in time. So I just think that, it's important that we just posit the positivity. I say that a lot, but I think it's important that we substantiate and we posit the positivity that we want to experience, whether it be in the future or like in the near future, in the far future, from whatever desires, the thought or the feeling of obtaining those desires, that we take that positivity and we substantiate it in the present moment. And when I say that, I really mean in the sense that anything that we want internally, we can have at any moment in time. It just takes recognizing that you have the ability to do that and then doing it for yourself. And when I say internally, I really mean in the sense of our feeling and in our emotions. Because I think that so often at the times we desire something that will alter the way that we feel, but it's really the fact that we can alter the way that we feel at any point in time. I think so often we think, oh, once I have this, I'll finally be happy. When you can decide and choose to be happy in the present moment. And when I say things external to us, I mean in the sense that yes, I guess to an extent we have control of what's outside of ourselves, but I don't think we really do in the sense that we don't have full control over it. God does, and it's about letting go of that control almost fully and doing what we can internally and trusting and having faith that what we want to happen externally will actually happen. And I think a big part of letting go of anger and letting go of, the negative emotions that aren't really beneficial to our lives. It's like I said, it's not necessarily suppression, but it's more recognition and then moving on from it, moving on from these emotions and recognizing, okay, I may feel this way in the moment, but it's truly not constructive for me. It's truly not something that's benefiting me in the present moment. And I think a big part of what could cause these emotions in the first place isn't necessarily the situations that we find ourselves in, but it's almost the inputs that we have that almost filter the situation. And when I say that, I mean in the sense that I think so often we end up viewing content and almost we allow ourselves to be influenced by things that almost put a filter on the way that we see the world. I think that everything to an extent puts a filter on the way that we see the world, and that's not a bad thing. But it's almost like what we watch, it puts a mental glasses on to the point where we could only see what's negative in the world instead of what's positive in the world. And I think that that could happen in so many ways, but one of the ones that I'm noticing a lot is by hanging around angry people, you're going to end up being angry yourself. So I think that it's important, and not even hanging around, but almost by being influenced by spending your time with angry people, angry content, angry music, anything like that, we end up being angry people. So I think that it's important that, if if it's art or something of that sort, I'm not saying that we should, completely block it off. We should never allow ourselves to see any of those things. I think that anything is good in proportion, but I think that it's important that we almost allow ourselves to be positive people by being around positive influences. And in doing so, we just naturally let go of the anger that we experience so often. Because I think that if we're constantly seeing people get angry around us, and if we're constantly hearing people be angry, then that'll just substantiate the fact that that feeling is something that is normal in our society, and it should be normal in our lives as a whole. And that then makes it more difficult for you to move on from those feelings and for you to recognize that it's not something constructive, especially if you see other successful people or people that you do want to be like, in a sense, being angry in that way. But as a whole, I just don't think it's something that's very positive for our lives, and it's something that's very constructive for our lives as a whole. And that's why I say that there's no point in being angry, because I really don't think that there is. I think that we could almost put our trust in, other people. And then when they let us down, we tend to find anger, and we tend to get angry in those circumstances. But, you know, I just don't think there's any point in that. It's almost just recognizing that anything outside of you is outside of your control. So why would you get angry if it's outside of your control? And why would you get angry if it's inside of your control? If that makes sense. If it's inside of your control, then it's something that you're capable of changing at any point in time. And if it's outside of your control, then why would you get angry? Because there's nothing that you could have done to remedy that situation. So I think that it's about almost being optimistic, but what's the right word? Almost flowy, in a sense, in the way that we live our lives. Almost in the sense of a constant letting go and picking up. And when I say that, I mean, it's a bit of a difficult thing to articulate, but it's almost when something bad happens to you, or when something bad that you don't want to happen happens, it's almost in a recognizing that, okay, like, you can experience the anger in a moment, but then you need to recognize that there's no point in me getting angry, Like, I did the best that I could in this situation, and clearly, if it's not working out, despite the effort that I put in, then that just means that it's God showing me that something else is for me, and this may not be the path for me right now. And I think that's perfectly okay. I think that so often we get angry because we're not going down the path that we want to go down, but we were never meant to go down the path that we wanted to go down. We're meant to go down the path that God wants us to go down. So I think that it's just important about recognizing that, and in letting go of control of your own circumstances. That's almost when you let go of anger as well, because then you realize that anything in your life is ultimately for you. Anything in your life is ultimately the path that you're supposed to go on, regardless of whether in the moment you see it as a success or a failure. So I just think that it's important that we recognize that as we go on in our day-to-day lives, and that'll just allow us to be more positive people and more peaceful people, not only in how we express ourselves to others, but almost how we experience ourselves by ourselves. I have a Bible verse that's prepared for this. It's taken from Psalms 37, verse 8, and it says, "Refrain from anger and abandon wrath. Do not fret, it can only bring harm." So I just think that it's important that we take that in our day-to-day lives. And yeah, thank you for watching.